quite often when I'm asked to speak here, which I'm always so grateful for, the opportunity to speak and to share with you, with this wonderful community, I am allowed to pick my own topics or my own titles. And this time around, I was given a title. And I like that too, because it's like getting an assignment, and there's a disciplined quality to that, to put a fine point on thinking and ideas. And so when I was given this, it says, want to change the world, just do it, right? And where my mind has been with this is this idea of affecting change. Affecting change. And I think about, there's this wonderful idea in metaphysics where we say that spirit, this universal power of creation, this energy, is there for us. And we say there is a power in the universe greater than we are for good that we can use. Because in metaphysics, we don't believe that we are separate from God. We believe that we are in God and God is in us. And so we have this relationship. But while I am in God, I am not the totality of God. And that's the idea of there's a power in the universe greater than we are for good, which we can use. And so in metaphysics, we're also trained that, okay, so we imagine how does that show up in terms of, an issue, a challenge. And so we begin to come into that place, where's this challenge pushing me? What's the difficulty? What's the question? What's the feeling? And we begin to craft something intentional, moving in some direction, to move beyond the challenge. And so metaphysics, this teaching says, and we say, okay, if I'm working with this power in the universe greater than I am for good, how's it working with me? And it simply says, yes, my beloved, it is done unto you. Yes, my beloved, it is done unto you. And so, now let me take that a step further. The founder of our movement, Ernest Holmes, he defines a lot of spiritual terms for us. And so he defines the term mystic. And he says, a mystic is someone who understands the consciousness and the mind of spirit. And so, you just want to go, I just want to go into some temple in the Himalayas, and I want to find out what's in God's mind, consciousness, thinking, right? But is it really all that complicated? Because Holmes, in talking about a mystic, who says, a mystic is one who understands the consciousness and thinking of God. So what is that thinking? Well, yes, my beloved, it is done unto you. And so I think, okay, well, Spirit, what's my part of that? And Spirit says, yes. Yes. So we were up in the Sutter Buttes yesterday. And it was really wonderful because the guide who was there spoke all day, because she was really showing us the flora. It's so interesting because we think of the wildflowers because we've had all this rain, and so of course the wildflowers in our brief spring are out. And so we think of Table Mountain, and we think of the Sierras, we think of the Coast Range, and there's these fields of all these different flowers. And the Sutter Buttes, I'm not a flower expert except from where I've spent places looking at flowers. And I noticed that the flowers there were kind of different. The variety was a little sparser. And you could tell that these wildflowers kind of had a lot of attitude, you know what I'm saying? They're just like, yeah, this is kind of a tough environment over here because the Sutter Buttes don't have a lot of water. Once you have the rain and there's the rain off in the shed, there's not a whole lot of water there. And so they're tough little flowers. They're cute, they're pretty, but they're tough, right? And so she was talking about the evolutionary nature of what's in the Sutter Buttes. And, and I loved it. Everything she talked about was evolution, evolution, evolution. And so when we talk about this idea, do we want to change the world? That term in there, change. That's what evolution is about. Change, transformation, moving beyond, right? That's what it is. And so now she moved off flowers a little bit, in terms of evolution, and she was showing us a tree, and this tree has leaves on it that the deer really like. But this tree has an ability, and these leaves they look so good. They look so, they don't look threatening at all. They're just sweet little green leaves, soft. But yet, if a deer comes by and really noshes down on the tree and moves on, and over the next several weeks, the leaves that come back are covered on the edges with spines. In just the turnaround from losing it from the deer. So the deer comes back, oh, that's that tree. I love the leaves. Oh, wait a minute. I don't want to get my mouth cut up. That's amazing. Hey, Spirit, I don't want to lose all my leaves. Yes, my beloved, it is done unto you. What do? Say yes. Say yes to change. Say yes to transformation. And so we stopped for lunch. I got to tell you, I was pretty worn out at that time, right? Had my little peanut butter sandwich, I'm just like, oh, thank you, God, we stopped for lunch. And so there were a lot of butterflies up there. And I was just I was sitting in an area that there was just all this different foliage of all kinds, down close to the ground. Some of those wildflowers are in there. There was some other stuff. And there was this little butterfly that came in and landed in there to work on those wildflowers, and I just really studied a small butterfly, and I just really watched, and I was looking at this butterfly's wings, and there were some orange spots, there was some zebra striping, there were some specks, there were some freckles, there were everything into the pattern of that, and I was just looking at those leaves, this intricate pattern. I thought, that's just so gorgeous. But I realized that once it was in there, if I had looked away and then come back, I'd have a hard time seeing the butterfly. Because that is its camouflage, which the pattern is kind of chaotic because it moves in a chaotic environment. I was thinking about evolution. I was thinking about the idea of affecting change, how that took place. And so a butterfly wants to exist, a butterfly wants to thrive, a butterfly wants to have a life cycle. And so somewhere along the line, it was like, God, there's a lot of birds around here. There's other insects. There's stuff going on. I want to go about my business. I want to live a happy life. I want to, experience my meaning and purpose in life and have some peace and joy and all of that. And so I've got to figure out a way to be here. Yes, my beloved, it is done unto you. Yes, okay, I'm on board with that, right? If you get into the thickness of metaphysics, it talks about evolution takes place as a result of the mechanical stimulations of where we find ourselves and the mechanics of the soul, the mechanics of the consciousness, coming together to affect change. I remember years ago I was at the Center for Spiritual Living in Paradise, and I was sitting in my office one day, and I got a phone call, and or the phone rang, and I was the only one there. So I answered it, and hi, Center for Spiritual Living, Paradise. This is Andy. Can I help you? I was all upbeat and everything because we're a positive, optimistic philosophy, right? And so, but the voice on the other end was not positive and optimistic, and I could tell the minute she started to speak, a person who was in a lot of pain, obviously, some sort of emotional pain, and she began to talk. And I asked her name, and I knew I wasn't familiar with her, and so I ascertained really quick. This was kind of a cold call. It was a woman who had been exposed to metaphysics. She lived in Southern California. Her life had really gone, she had manifested some real sideways issues in her life. She's a middle-aged woman, had to end up coming up to Paradise to live with relatives, but she had been exposed to unity in Southern California, and so she tracked us down. And she was really at the end of the line, and she was telling me about all these horrible things that she had done in her life, and And so this meant that she was a horrible person, and on and on and on. And maybe she wanted to hurt herself, and she didn't know if she wanted to be here anymore. So I listened to her, and she was using some really aggressive, dark language against herself. And I listened, and I let her know I was there, but I could tell she needed to move out that energy. And so she talked and talked and talked, and finally she stopped. She pumped her brakes and began to move down. And there was a pause, and I said, well, that's not, everything you've said is, I don't believe, is my experience of the real you. And she goes, well, you don't know me. I said, you're right. In the physical realm, I don't know you, but I do know you. And she says, what are you talking about? And I began to describe her from what we know as being the truth of us, that we are beautiful, divine beings of spirit, that we are special, that we are prized, that we are treasured, that we are the ultimate expression of the divine. And so I began to weave my language through this, and where I wanted her, and I'm going to use, I know this is a rough word to use, I wanted to manipulate her into responding to me using yes. I had to get her from the darkness to the yes, so that she could align with the language and the consciousness and the thought of God itself that says, yes, my beloved. That evolution is, and affecting change isn't something that we beseech out of some power that we don't understand, but we are in fear of, or we kneel down before. We believe that we are co-creators with spirit. And we do that by saying yes. By matching yes, my beloved, with yes, spirit. I remember when I was in high school, I was really struggling at that time in my life. I was really unhealthy, and so my junior year, in your junior year, you're supposed to take U.S. history, so I was there, and but I was one of those guys. I was cutting classes. I was doing stuff I shouldn't have been doing in terms of being healthy, but it was my experience. It was my journey, and so I'm going along, and I wasn't, and I had been held back a grade in elementary school, so during my junior year, I actually turned 18, around this time of the year, I turned 18, so anyway, and so, but this is important because we talk about March, and the month of March is important in this, in terms of if you think about the school year, and so, I was supposed to go to my U.S. history class second or third period or something, well, I didn't go, and so I had better things to do, and so, anyway, the gentleman who taught the class, I don't know his first name. It's just Mr. Hun. And Mr. Hun he left this world quite a while ago, because I did know his twin daughters. And anyway, I was in the same class with them, I think. I'm not sure. But anyway, and so I didn't know Mr. Hun very well. And the thing about, when you're a teacher that teaches something that's required in high school, you have these big classes because everybody has to do it. And so I was in a big class of his, and I was on the back row. I sat on the back row of everything, and I wasn't doing my homework, and I was cutting classes and stuff. And so, I just wanted to avoid a teacher at all costs, I didn't want to deal with a teacher. And but I don't know why. I guess I had some level of intelligence because I did fairly well on tests. So I was like hanging by a thread. You know what I'm saying? I was like just hanging in there. And so, but I didn't know him. So anyway, in the high school I went to, there were like lunchtime was 2 or 3 periods. I don't know what it was, but anyway, so I came in from where I had been all day and kind of drifted into the quad area, and I was sitting on this picnic table, just kind of sitting here. And Mr. Hun just comes out of a building from the other side of the quad area, and he looks at me. He's like, yeah, whatever. And he walks over, and I figure, well, he's coming over here. He's probably going to get something in the cafeteria. And he comes up, and he just gets right in front of me. He said, if you don't get away from the knuckleheads that you're running around with in life and get yourself out of this school and out of this town, he said, you're going to end up in a place that you're not going to want to go. He said, and I'm not, he says, I'm a high school teacher, but I'm not going to tell you you need to graduate. I'm going to tell you what you need to do. You need to get yourself a GED, and you need to get out of here any way you can. And I said, what? Aren't you supposed to tell me I need to graduate and get you? And what he was suggesting was, he said, you need to go just take yourself into the service and get out of this place no matter what. And, you know, I'm a baby boomer, and so Vietnam was on our minds. And I think Vietnam was kind of over at that time, but it was still, you know, it was all anti-war and all this stuff. I had long hair and all that stuff. And I'm sitting there, and it's like, this teacher is telling me not to worry about graduating, which wasn't an option, by the way, and to just get out of there. And when I say it wasn't an option, I mean, even in my junior year, it wasn't like, you know, when some kids are like marginal, it's like, okay, go to summer school and like take an elective and get yourself caught up. I mean, I was so far behind. I had destroyed my high school career. I had destroyed it. I wasn't even close. I would have to have been there until probably now to graduate, right? Okay? And here's this guy who, believe it or not, in terms of his rough language, that was a long time ago, and I don't know if I have it quite right. I think there were some 4-letter words in there too, Mr. Hun, which he wasn't that kind of guy, but he mixed some of those in there. And because sometimes spirit shows up with 4-letter words. And so this is March. By the 1st of July, I enlisted. I was in boot camp. And it was almost like I kind of just went into a trance, and because I did, I ran with people who reflected my basic life values of the time, and interests, and so those were the knuckleheads I was hanging out with, and I just kind of. Over the next few weeks and months, I just kind of drifted away, and I got involved in the process. I took the GED, and I had to do all the rigmarole for the service and everything, and I went in. And so, why am I saying this? Because I believe that, see, this question here, want to change it says change the world. It's still metaphysical principles, practices, laws, work in the macro and the micro evenly. So I imagine Mr. Hun coming out of his classroom or wherever he came, and he saw Mr. Knucklehead across from there. And there was, now this is important. What starts this whole thing? In metaphysics, we call it the divine urge. In other words, the butterfly who wants to make it and have beautiful wings so it can't be camouflaged, it has to start with that idea of the divine urge to change. I don't like, and divine urge isn't like ballet dancers and stuff. Divine urge is, I'm uncomfortable, I'm frightened, I'm afraid, I don't like this scene. That's the divine urge. And so he looked over at me, and somehow I inspired something really uncomfortable in him. And he marched over to me because he said yes to his divine urge. And in the process, he touched a divine urge in me that I didn't even know I had, and I said yes. You want to change the world? Start pushing divine urge buttons by listening to your divine urge. And then both of you say yes. Okay? All right? And so we think about this idea, and whatever discomfort that I may be in, and something rises up in me to open myself up to something larger. And I go to a power in the universe greater than I am for good that I can use. I say, I'm uncomfortable down here. What does that power want me to say? Yes. One more time. What's that power want me to say? Yes. Yes. And if someone walks up to you and says you're a knucklehead and you might want to do something, what should you say? Yes. That's it. That's how we change it. By saying yes. This absolutely gorgeous world around us, like the Sutter Buttes, is filled with nothing but yes. All those species, all of life saying yes. I want to express. I want to connect with my meaning and purpose. I want peace in my life. I want to surround myself with beauty. And what does the universe want us to say? Yes. That's it. If you're miserable, you don't have to be miserable. You can say yes. Charles Fillmore talked about change. He said, our unique spiritual gifts of, this is kind of a long list. Fillmore's a wordy guy, so hang on. Our unique spiritual gifts of life, love, truth, substance, intelligence, faith, power, and discernment, and imagination are the divine gifts that we can use to full capacity to affect change. And it's in a little 3-letter word of yes. And I know, because what I love about Fillmore saying, so we all have our unique gifts. We all have our contributions. We all have our voice. And I know that for a lot of us right now, we look at our world around us and there's some things that are making us uncomfortable. But all we have to do is simply show up in our special gifts of spirit and say yes. And join the evolution and join the change. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.